Where he lies. Diu meu, ah? Where he lies.
Oh, where he lies, where he lies.
Where he lies.
Ni hao, konnichiwa, Foxflix Rice. Welcome to the Valentine's Day Special. With me today is Nathan Aniki.
Hello.
We're going to get nice and cozy by the fire and talk about three distinct romantic films. Actually, that's a lie. They're all comedies in a different way. But I suppose one counts, doesn't it? The Korean one?
Yeah.
What do you think? Does that count more of a romance?
Yeah, I would say so, definitely.
Yeah. So, both of us don't have too much to talk about at the beginning of the episode today because basically I finished editing the first one 2 days ago and we're right into this special for you guys trying to get it out before Valentine's Day. There's no real discussion around what we've been watching and stuff because today's films is what we've both just about had time to watch. So, and thank you so much from both of us for the response to the first episode. It's been a lot better than either of us expected. We just crossed 100 views, I believe, as I'm recording this. So yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much, guys. Plenty more to come. Nathan, anything you would like to talk about or add or touch on?
No, just again, thank you for the support and the messages of support. It's been quite overwhelming, actually.
Yeah, no, it's been really surprised, especially some of you that have listened along and have sent in messages, for different segments of the show when you've listened along with reactions. It's been really, really surprising, but in a good way. So thank you so much. Arigato gozaimasu. And yeah, I suppose we should tell them about the thing that happened last night.
You getting into a Yakuza brawl.
Yeah. So, my foot is hurt. Unfortunately, I had to take care of some business, perform some heat actions, and my leg is pretty banged up at the moment. But so bear with me if I'm a bit different to the first episode. I am hopped up on painkillers and vengeance, shall we say. So, yeah. But it's all good. We're all here to have fun. It's Valentine's Day, right? Perfect time for such things.
Exactly. Did you actually watch anything this week or the films for the show?
No, I didn't. I didn't have any time to watch anything. I wanted to watch Royal Warriors for the New Year film, but I was that shattered after that editing stint I did that I just passed out.
Yeah.
Because normally it's tradition for me to have my family usually does like a New Year meal, and I will watch something special for Lunar New Year. But this year, just after the episode drop, I just passed out and I was out, and that was it. I was done.
Yeah, same. I mean, I watched not really much to talk about because I haven't finished it, but I've been watching All of Us Are Dead, the new Korean show on Netflix that everybody seems to be talking about.
Yeah.
That didn't sound like a very interested
I don't care for Korean zombie horrors. I don't know why. There's a couple that stick out. Obviously, Train to Busan's classic and Attack of the Gas Station. Is it Attack of the Gas Station or Attack the Gas Station?
Yeah. Attack at the Gas Station, I think.
Yeah. Which may or may not be getting a Blu-ray.
See, I don't like Train to Busan. Spoiler alert.
I haven't seen it in long enough to have an opinion on it at the moment. It's one that I keep meaning to re-add to the collection and rewatch, but for some reason, Korean zombie films just have never really interested me.
No, I mean I don't dislike it actually. That's
no, and I like K-horror in general. Like unfair. I like K-horror.
I just found it so generic.
Yeah, it does feel a bit, at least from the clips I've seen and the trailers. But if you're out there watching the series and loving it, great, keep it up.
Oh no, sorry, I was talking about Train to Busan, generic.
Oh, Train to Busan, yeah. No, I mean, again, I haven't seen that soon enough to have a memory of it. I know I've seen it.
But this All of Us Are Dead, I think it's great.
Oh, is it more comedic then, or what's the deal?
It's much more serious in tone. In fact, I'd probably go so far. Like I said, I'm only halfway through, so
right,
not too many thoughts. But so far, I'd say it's my favorite Korean zombie content overall.
Okay, cool. Is there anything Western in the zombie genre you could like give it? So I have an
It's
idea. Could you give it some references? Because I know my zombie films
it's
in
very
general. So.
indebted to Romero,
Oh, okay. That might be good then.
right down to its soundtrack.
Ooh. Okay. That
But
has me interested.
I suppose, Dawn of the Dead, but through a contemporary Korean high school lens.
Ooh. That has me. So, okay. So here's my thing. And this is where I think the marketing of Asian film is is a is an issue in the West. I know it's mainstream now, but I still think the way these films are marketed is a bit of a problem because even though it's a series, sorry, because everything I saw was this was the next best thing, this was the next train to Busan, this was the next train. It just kept getting compared to Busan.
Yeah, which is
So,
the trouble.
so I'm like having no real memory of Busan, and I I don't remember necessarily hating it vaguely, but I don't think I fell in love with it either. So I was just thinking like probably another film like that. But I guess if it's you know, if it's not that, from what you've described it to me, I think I would probably enjoy it. So we'll
It's
see.
certainly worth a shot.
Well, I mean, I know you're not done yet, but I have seen quite a lot of divisiveness about certain characters. So
Yeah, see, excuse me, sorry. I'm a lot easier on stuff like that because a lot of people like to question horror films, series. Oh, X character did this dumb thing. Y character did this dumb thing. And I've made that many dumb, stupid decisions in my life that I sort of take a step back and think, actually, if I was in this horror situation, could I count on myself to make the quote unquote right decision? No,
yeah,
I
and I've
couldn't.
noticed some people just don't like it when their favorite characters get killed off,
Exactly.
and they can't justify it. Like
That's it.
they can't. They just and no offense to anyone who thinks like this, but you can't. Most people who I've seen make these arguments, they don't present an objective argument. It was just, oh no, he was my favorite, or she was my favorite, or I loved them. They ruined it. Wah. And it's like, well, why? Because someone like me will be like, okay, cool, why? And I, it's not me trying to be condescending or put someone down. I just want to know why.
Yeah,
Like, tell me your
exactly.
opinion. But most of them can't. It's just like, well, so yeah, not to be attacking anyone out there because that's certainly not what I'm aiming at here. But
No,
it
no.
makes it when I'm someone on the outside who's trying to get interested in a series or something new, or maybe I've got an inkling, like now I do, thanks to what Nathan's just told me, because we haven't even talked about this off air. Um, it's like if I see people talking about it, I'll ask them questions because I don't trust general reviews. That's not really how I judge film. I tend to spend a lot of time researching a film as spoiler free as possible before I jump into something, especially if it's a Netflix production or something like that. I will usually, it takes a bit more to get me to go over the edge than typical, especially in a genre I'm not super familiar with.
Yeah, and I think
Um,
the other side of this particular argument is I've seen it get a lot of hate simply because it's Netflix.
well, I'll be honest, I'm not on the Netflix train. The only Netflix original I really enjoyed was Daredevil. And even then, it's not really a Netflix original, is it? It's more Marvel. So
Yeah, I mean, I
I,
can't comment on that, but I'm all aboard the Netflix train, to be quite honest.
yeah, I mean, I think it's great they're getting all of these series on there and stuff. So, it's great they're bringing everything over. Um, but for me, I activate Netflix like once a year, maybe, and then I'll watch everything in a month, and then that's it. There's nothing else for me to watch. So,
Yeah,
because I find that our UK Netflix, for the Americans that are listening, UK Netflix kind of sucks in terms of breadth of selection. It's not brilliant
no,
compared to other parts of the world. So yeah, but no, it sounds interesting. I mean, hopefully it gets a physical release. I'd like to pick it up, but I don't. I don't think Netflix series and stuff usually get physical releases, at least not till way after.
No, there's certainly a big gap in the market for that.
Yeah. Sorry, just having a drink. All the painkillers are making my mouth drier, so
Right.
I'll be pausing more. But no, that's really interesting. Like I said, I definitely want to check it out now. I mean, I enjoy the Romero stuff, and Dawn of the Dead's one of my favorite zombie films of all time. So, if it
Yeah, I mean,
borrows,
that's a very broad blanket description, but
okay. Well, like I said, maybe I will. Maybe next time I go and reactivate Netflix, I'll keep it in mind to check it out. So
yeah, it should be definitely. Yeah, you'll know within an episode if you're on board or not.
okay, cool. Yeah, sounds good. Speaking of stuff that I was looking forward to, I forgot to mention last week the Obayashi box set from Third
Yeah.
Window that's coming out. Is it Obayashi?
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot to mention this last week because it's so far out, but I'm really looking forward to the Obayashi set coming out with The Girl Who Conquered Time. What was it? His Motorcycle Hair Island, School in the
fan of that.
Crosshairs, and the other one. I'm really looking forward to that. I know Nathan is too. So we will probably cover those films at some point.
I would love to.
Yeah, so we definitely will. We'll dive into those
His
later on.
Motorbike Her Island is a huge favourite of mine.
Yeah, I mean, I liked Girl Who Conquered Time a lot because I saw a release of it in the US years ago when I was like really young. So yeah, it'll be interesting to rewatch that because I've wanted to rewatch the original because I've seen all the remakes, but I've wanted to rewatch the original so many times, but I've just been waiting for and I've been asking for a Blu-ray. So I'm really happy it's coming out. I know that they were unable to license the entire Onamichi trilogy, but still fantastic. I'm like really happy and looking forward to that. So yeah, that completely slipped my mind just because that's coming out on the back end of the year.
I hope that sells well.
I hope so too. I mean, I hope I can pick it up as long as there's a copy left for me.
Yeah, because I presume it's limited.
Yeah, it is limited as far as I can tell. So yeah. Yes, if anyone wants to send me a early Foxmas present, that'd be it.
That'd be the one.
Yeah. Okay,
Yep.
that's enough of that because we both know that's not going to happen. All right, leaving that in there. Okay, guys. Anyway, so yeah, just to shift. Sorry, like I said, I'm hopped up on painkillers, so I'm a bit all over the place. Vegan pot guys kick their teeth in next time. Anyway, and not in bare feet. Okay, Diary of a Big Man, 1988, directed by Ko Yen, starring Chow Yun-fat, Joey Wong, Sally Yi, Weiss Lee, and Carrie Ng has a smaller part, but she's still central to the overall plot. Yeah, I love this film. I really, really do. This is one of my highest rated comedies, I think, ever. I think it's maybe my highest rated pure comedy film. Because so we talked about Tiger in the last episode. That's like action comedy. This is a pure comedy with a bit of romance sprinkled in. Yeah, I believe, Nathan, you've got a synopsis up this time.
I have. It goes something like this. A two-timing bigamist finds himself concocting scheme after scheme with his best friend, Chi Hung, to prevent either of his wives from discovering his bigamy. The unwanted intervention of a police officer, as well as a series of unfortunate events, lead to the wife's discovery of the whole plot.
And it's very nice.
It's very nice indeed.
Oh, very nice. Yeah.
Oh my word, this film.
So, okay, I don't completely agree with that synopsis, as in just calling him a two-timing bigamist. Because to be fair, this film has an innocence to it that kind of tracks throughout. So the general thing is, Chow Yun-fat's character is self-narrating this whole part of his life, and he's dating two women at the same time as a dating thing. He's dating them, right? And this is fairly normal for that time period. Some people, when they date, they have multiple dates on the go because they're not officially with one or the other yet, right? That's normal. Okay. It's not so normal nowadays, but it certainly used to be more of a thing back then, as far as I'm aware. And, everything's going well. And the whole thing is one of them's a flight attendant and the other, she runs a boutique in town, I believe. So, yeah. And one's from the US and one's from Paris, or one lives in Paris or spends more time in Paris and the other spends more time in the US. You have to forgive me. It's been a couple of weeks since I watched this, but
No, you nailed it.
oh, cool, good memory. All right, yeah. So basically, what happens is the setup of this film is he's dating both of these women, and he's genuinely in love with both of them. Okay, like he really, really is. And the first thing he says is it's time for him to decide which one. Right. This is why I don't necessarily agree with calling him a two-time bigamist straight off the bat, because
No.
and he's trying to decide, and then he decides on Joey. Is it Joey? I think he decides on Joey Wong's character.
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah,
And then,
so he decides on Joey Wong, which personally I would pick. No offense to Sally Yee, but Joey Wong. I mean, who celebrated her birthday recently? I think she turned 56.
Really?
Yeah, this January 31st, and she still looks as good as she did back then. She has not aged. Apparently, her secret is a healthy diet and living a Zen lifestyle and going to bed early. Genuinely.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, because she lives in Canada now, I think. Anyway, sorry, Joey's one of my favorite actresses. So yeah, anytime we talk about Joey Wong, will be lots of praise from me. She has done some fantastic roles. But yeah, anyway, back on track. Joey is the one he picks, and
Well, kind of.
Well, I think he
accidentally proposes to her, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think basically because he has the ring with him because he's planning on it, but he's not. I don't think he wants to do it then, but he has sort of mostly decided to go with her.
Yeah.
And
he's got it in a handkerchief, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's got it in a handkerchief. And the whole thing is they're sitting in a restaurant and I can't remember the exact details of the scene, but basically, I think the ring falls out or she has to go into his pocket for something. And
yeah,
she pulls out. She passes it to him because she's like, oh, this ring? Oh my God, thank you so much. Because she knows it's an engagement ring. And she's like, yes, I want to marry you. And then, okay, yeah, this is where it becomes clearer. So that kind of happens as an accident, but then he accepts it. That's where this went. So he had the ring with him because he was still thinking, but he was thinking about Joey's. And then he, again, the accident happens and then he accepts it. He's like, right, okay, I have to tell Sally's character, And the whole thing is he's taken her to the airport because she's going off on work, and he's about to tell her, and then she proposes to him. I believe that's what happens, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Because she just says, she just proposes to him and doesn't even really give him a choice.
No, she just puts the ring on his finger.
Yeah, she just puts the ring on his finger and is like, I'm going to marry you when I get back. And he's like, and then she just leaves because the plane's leaving. So that's literally it. That's how abrupt it is. So suddenly he's engaged to both. So
and
then he spends some
him in those because he narrates it straight into the camera, doesn't it?
Yeah. So the way this film is structured is it intercuts with these narrations as if he's reading from his diary or writing in his diary, but he talks to the audience. He breaks this fourth wall because he's just facing the audience and he's talking as if he was telling you what he would be writing. That's why it's called a diary of a big man, because it's kind of done in that sort of style. And then he's like, I have an idea. I can marry one when she's in Paris, and I can marry the other when she's in the United States, because one of them, I forget which, Nathan, you might know. One of them is living abroad while the other's in Hong Kong.
Yeah, Joey's
in Hong Kong. Oh, she's in New York because I know she opens a boutique. Sorry to skip ahead. And Joey's New York.
Sally goes to Paris.
Paris, yeah. So he's like thinking about how can he how can he do this? Because he genuinely loves both. And he emphasizes this. He loves both. This isn't like a shithead thing of like, I want two women. It's like he doesn't want to upset either of them. Because part of the setup of this film is it shows you briefly each of their relationships, how they met and stuff. And he just genuinely is like, I don't want to upset either. I don't want to break either one's heart. So how do I do this? And then he has this, he comes up with the first general premise of the scheme because he's a stockbroker. So he gets his friend involved, who's played by Weiss Lee, who does a fantastic job here, by the way. This is the first time I've seen him do anything comedic, and he just nails it.
Same, and he is perfect.
Yeah. So just to premise, this film works because of its cast. I don't think that this story would have worked without all of these components in place, because they just are 110% in their roles. They give everything to what they're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, he comes up with this concoction that basically he'll because one of them ends up moving to Hong Kong as well. I think Sally's character calls up and is like, hey, I'm going to move to Hong Kong. So then it's like they're both in Hong Kong. Oh no, sorry. Back up. One calls up and is going to visit Hong Kong for a couple of weeks before she goes back.
That's right.
And then he concocts this scheme with his best friend, again played by Weiss Lee, who, because they both work at the stock firm, and the idea is he's going to call Chow's character to come into the market, or to come into work, quote unquote, by saying when Europe needs him or when the United States need him.
Yeah, that's it.
And the code is Europe and the US are codes for the individual women. So he does this thing where he'll go have dinner at one's, and then he gets a call, and then he goes has dinner at another's. And then he sleeps a few hours at one, gets called, interrupted, and goes to the others because the stock market's crashed, or, you know, again, there's all these kinds of excuses made. And this is the first about 10 minutes of the film is spent with this plan, just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
It's literally a montage of him just going between the two apartments, isn't there? It's gold.
It's brilliant the way this is executed. And the thing is, it shows the toll it takes on both of them, because he's obviously wiped out. Weiss Lee is like knackered. He's run ragged because he's constantly staying awake to call Chow at these ridiculous hours.
He's on anxiety medication.
Yeah, he's on anxiety medication at some point. He gets on that. And also the fly in the ointment here, by the way, is Carrie Ng's character. Because it is Carrie, isn't it?
Is that Weiss Lee's girlfriend?
Yes.
Yes, right, okay.
Yeah, Carrie Ng's character is the fly in the ointment here because she's Weiss Lee's girlfriend. And she works at the firm too. So she kind of senses that there's something going on, but she doesn't quite know. So she's a background character, but she's central to the overall story.
Yeah.
And yeah, so this montage happens, and then basically what ultimately ends up happening is he gets into a car accident because he's so tired.
That's right, yeah.
So he gets into a car accident because he's so tired, and then he's at the hospital, and then it's a question of who gets called, right? Because it's like, okay, he's injured. The hospital needs to call someone next of kin to inform, you know, who do we call? Well, they call the one that he's officially married to in Hong Kong and registered with.
And then he calls the other.
Yeah, because
he doesn't realize the cop is calling.
He doesn't realize the cop has gone and called his other wife. So, sorry, I'm just thinking ahead here. This is hilarious to me. So basically,
you're thinking about the elevator scene, aren't you?
No, I'm thinking about what happens before the elevator scene.
What happens before the elevator scene?
Okay, so one of them, so he finds out that they're both. I'm going to have to edit this episode a lot already. I'm trying to remember. Does she arrive and then he I think it's Sally arrives first. And then
Yes. And then she goes into the room.
Yeah, with him, and then he's leaving with her as Joey turns up. Yeah, that's what happens, isn't it? Because they're leaving, and then Joey turns up and he sees her, so he finds a way to kind of like snake out of sight. And as he goes back into the room he was staying in, Joey's informed of the room, and she goes in there. She goes in there, and obviously he's been transferred out with another patient. Well, this other patient is in a full body cast.
That's right. Yes.
So she walks into the room and she's like, "Oh my God, what has happened? What has happened to you? Dear, what is going on?" And so she thinks this poor guy who's in a full body cast is him. Meanwhile, he's still in the room, hiding behind a cloth.
That's right.
Well, she's freaking out. Yeah, that's what was making me laugh, because it's just the most random thing, but it somehow this all works. Just trust me. Somehow this film works. I could not explain how it works. It just does. So anyway, so then he snakes out and he takes the divider with him into the elevator.
A literal curtain.
A literal, divider. And the way this next bit is set up is all three of them are in the elevator together, but the two women are on the opposite side of the divider. So then Chow is desperately doing everything he can to make sure that Joey doesn't see his face. And there's just like a couple minutes in the elevator where he's doing everything from ducking and diving. He gets into a fight with a little kid.
Yeah.
There's a thing with a plant. It's just that whole thing of like, they could be seen at any moment, and he's just doing the most ridiculous things to get himself out of this predicament. Anyway,
and he's so energetic with it.
He's really energetic. Yeah, everyone in this film looks like they're having a really good time. Even the women, they play their parts so well, because there's some complaints that say that the women aren't very believable initially because they come off as a bit dumb. But to me, they're not necessarily stupid. They're just really trusting.
Yes. That's a good point.
Yeah, and obviously it was a different time too. And keep in mind that in the scheme of things, they're newlyweds. So they're still in that honeymoon period. Anyway, so it continues on. And the reason why we're bringing up this scene in particular is because it plays into the inspector, who's played by Kent Chang, that's it. So basically what happens is he hears about the cop who's under him calling the wife, but then it's like he hears about him being at two different addresses. So he starts to get suspicious, because he's like, how can the one person have two separate addresses? Doesn't make sense. So he goes to investigate both properties. You can take this one, because it's just,
I mean, he goes over, doesn't he? And he goes over to Joey's apartment, isn't it?
Yes.
To investigate.
And Chow gets wind of it.
And he's stuck elsewhere.
So he tries to call Wace.
Yeah.
To go
tells
over.
him to impersonate him.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, he has to tell Joey that the cop is actually not a cop, that he's just pretending to be a cop. He's really a mental patient.
Who's escaped.
To try and... The schemes in this film are so elaborate.
Yeah. It sounds a mess when you sit down and explain it, but the way it flows together, it works. Yeah, it just works. So we're not going to get into every little thing about this film. We'll highlight some more stuff in a bit, but it's one of those things that it's better if you don't know going in. But just to give you an idea, so, and poor Joey in this, I mean, she gets the worst of it, I think, because she's standing there with a knife like ready to defend herself against this cop because he's asking questions and trying to look around. And
Weasley convinces the cop that she's actually insane with grief because of an imagined dead son.
Yes.
Oh my word, this film. It does. I think when you describe it, it sounds so madcap, but it does work when you're watching it.
Yeah, this film is it's tons of fun. If you go into this trying to be like super serious and dissect everything, it'll fall apart. But if you go in, if you want to just chuck on a comedy, a slightly romantic comedy, this is just perfect to me, at least.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else I would want to chuck on if I really want to have a laugh. And to give people a comparison for those of you who watch anime out there, Chow Yun-fat is like the ultimate harem anime protagonist. This is kind of like a slice of life harem anime where everything goes wrong around him and he just does everything in his power to keep it together.
And he's turned up to the max.
Yeah, he has turned up to the max. And again, none of it is done. He's not doing it to be nasty or for the sake of being sneaky or to genuinely deceive. He's doing it to try and keep everybody happy. That is a very important thing I think you have to remember about this film, because it's very, very easy to look at it and be like, oh, well, it's a male thing. And, you know, he's just playing off two girls against each other. And I mean, it's not to say what he's doing to the women is right, but his position on it is he's just trying to keep both happy because he genuinely loves both.
Either.
Yeah, he doesn't want to upset either. It's not about like, oh, I can have both. It's more about like, oh no, I don't want to upset her, and oh no, I don't want to upset her, and da 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 da. So, yeah, and again, there's more schemes, and it just goes on. And I will say this: whatever you're expecting to happen, doesn't.
No, it really doesn't.
It really doesn't, because every single time you think like he's about to get found out, another layer is added.
Yeah.
Or another twist is thrown in, but it never gets repetitive or dull.
Oh no, never. I mean, I will admit I got lost in some of his schemes.
Yeah.
I really did. I was like, what is he doing now?
Yeah. I mean, you have to pay attention to this film. You get more. Okay, so this isn't really a brain off film. It's still a riot, but to me, you get more out of it if you're awake enough to pay attention while you're watching.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's definitely a big thing. And what was the other thing I wanted to touch on? Oh yeah, of course, the musical.
Oh, I was just about to say the musical number,
which you will have heard some of in these. Very nice.
Very nice. It's amazing.
Okay. I hate musical numbers with a passion. Call that being a theatre kid and having to direct several musicals that I had to watch over and over again. So I normally have like a real aversion to musical numbers. It'll kill a film for me. This works. This reminds me of like a Weird Al music video.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, it's just got that comedy vibe to it, basically. Because they break out into this musical number, which is like a little montage, and it's when he's at his peak. So it's when he thinks he's got everything worked out mostly. So the whole point of the music video, which I will link in the description of this video, is which because it sums up the film quite well. It's his fantasy playing out, which is why it's called Oh Very Nice, because it's just like everything is perfect. He loves both women love him, and just it's just like this idealized perfect little fantasy he goes into when he thinks he's winning, so to speak.
And it's genuinely a great song.
Yeah, it's a great song, and it's well filmed, well executed. And then just out of nowhere, the reality comes crashing in.
Just like that.
Just like that, yeah, because it just snaps out. Because why he goes, who's that? Because someone snaps him out of his daydream, and then it starts to all fall apart slowly. So yeah, I don't want to get into too much detail and spoil the ending of the film, because it's got a nice ending that you wouldn't expect, and then it's got a zinger attached onto the end of it.
Yeah, and I agree. That's why the synopsis on Letterboxd actually gives a bit of a spoiler there, so I left that off when I read it.
Yeah. Just trust us on this. This is if you like Hong Kong comedy, this is a classic for comedy.
I've got no idea why this film isn't better known.
I love it. I really, really do. If you're looking for something for a laugh to watch this Valentine's weekend, stick this on. You will not be disappointed. You will not be disappointed unless you have a very, 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 very strong aversion to this type of comedy. Again, disclaimer, because I know that Hong Kong comedy doesn't work for everybody, but this is just an absolute riot from start to finish. It does not let up.
You can see Chow Yun-fat with baguettes tied to his head.
Yeah, that's true. And you even get that ending. I don't want to spoil it for people, but just there's a heroic bloodshed reference with the ending, and it just works so well.
And I meant to mention it earlier. There's actually there's quite a good meta joke earlier on towards the beginning when he goes to pick up, I think, Joey from the airport, maybe. And there's a radio announcement saying Chow Yun-fat has been voted Man of the Year.
Yeah. There's a
that
lot
made me laugh.
Yeah, there's a lot of little meta in jokes and stuff. But yeah, anyway, back on track. You have to see this film. Just go watch it. If you like Hong Kong comedy, you owe it to yourself to sit down and watch this, especially if you're a fan of Joey or Sally. Because I will say this, if you are concerned about the way the girls come across in terms of their intelligence, don't be, because they do redeem themselves towards the end. In an absolutely brilliant sequence.
Yeah, they certainly do.
So, like I said, don't think too much about it when you're watching it. Pay attention so you don't miss anything by all means, but just sit back and enjoy the ride because that's what this film is. And also, Chow Yun-fat playing a sax.
It really is quite a ride.
Yeah. No, exactly. And Chow with the sax is just...
Oh, when he's walking down the street playing the saxophone.
Yep.
Oh, it's so good.
That is a classic image. I don't care what anyone says. So many people think of that. So,
yeah, I mean, you know me. We've talked about this off air. I'm not a huge fan of the 80s as an era. I'm not a huge fan of comedies in general, much less Hong Kong comedies. But this works big time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Put anyone else in the lead apart from Chow Yun-fat, and I don't think it would.
No, he definitely. I mean, to be fair, I think they all carry the film because I think if you didn't have the right females opposite him, that would fall apart. But definitely Chow's charm helps sell this fantasy, if you like. So, yeah, and you will be surprised to find it does have quite a good heart under it all. So that's the other thing.
It does actually, yeah.
So, which is why I'm saying I don't necessarily agree with a lot of I can see why there's some of that anti this film sentiment. I don't agree with it because I think if you're thinking that way, you're missing the underlying point.
Yes, and I agree totally.
Okay, so Yakuza in Love, Mikuro Mochizuki, 1997, starring Eiji Okuda and Yuna Natsuo.
When an innocent young country girl falls for a low-level Yakuza, she enters a completely different world in which the line between good and evil are quickly blurred. Through great ups and downs, their love will be tested, but the ultimate test lies in whether or not they will survive the downward pull of the lifestyle they have chosen. I think that sums it up pretty well.
Yeah, so as we mentioned on episode 1, this is part of the No Good Middle-Aged Deadbeat Yakuza trilogy.
Comprises of this film, Another Lonely Hitman, and Onibi, The Fire Within.
Yes. As far as the trilogy goes, this is my least favorite.
Agreed. And strangely, when I first saw it, maybe 10 years ago, I guess. It was my favorite of the trilogy.
So Nathan lied to me on this because he told me for months and months and months that this was a downer film, like a big downer. So I kept
I
putting
still
off
think it
watching it.
is.
Hang on. Let me explain for context. So I can understand that because of the ending, obviously. However, I think it's important that people realize that the majority of this film is a black comedy. Unlike the other Mochizuki films, which are serious character studies, this is still somewhat of a character study, but the way it is presented is as a black comedy versus a somber sort of walk through the life of the characters. The exception being the final 20 minutes. The final 20 minutes, it does switch over to that kind of classic Mochizuki, the reality of their situation crashing in on them.
Yeah. I disagree with you a little bit. I don't think it's as comedic as it sort of turns about halfway through for me. I mean, when we say comedic as well, we're not talking big Diary of a Big Man comedic.
No, this is a black comedy. The comedic essence is what I would call a black comedy. It's like they're taking serious subjects and they're presenting them in a truthful light, but they're also presenting some of the most extreme, ridiculous things to do with the subjects. For example, in the setup, Patriarch is just out of his mind. He's unhinged in a ridiculous way. And I say it's a ridiculous way because it's like the way it's presented when he's introduced is the wife is on the phone talking while he's beating the crap out of one of his, family members behind him. And he just keeps calling him a prick. And he's like, it's really, really over the top. And I mean, it's not presented in a serious way either, where it's like this guy's getting the crap kicked out of him. Oh my God. It focuses on the wife trying to have this phone conversation.
And she stops him.
Yeah, she stops him. And then it's, why does she stop him? Well, because he's going to pick up a vase that was a gift and it was quite expensive.
Simple as that, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of, that's why I call it a black comedy, because the way it presents a lot of its subjects for the first half of the film is with a humorous twist, and the soundtrack aids that, I think, because the soundtrack is quite,
I don't want to use the word playful, but
yeah, it's melancholic. It's juxtaposed against the tone of the scenes that are happening in a lot of cases, but it fits, but it also kind of lifts the tone at the same time.
yes, yeah, no, I agree with that.
It's like Nathan said, it's almost like playful for me. This is the last film in the trilogy I saw. I saw Another Lonely Hitman and Only Be First. And one day we will get into the trilogy as a whole and we'll break it down and we'll go really deep on these films and what they all mean and everything. We're not doing that today. I still enjoyed this film, but it was definitely not what I was expecting going in, especially with Nathan telling me that the film was like a real downer. And knowing what I knew of Mochizuki pieces beforehand, I was, to me, his films are mood pieces, as I call them, which is like, you've got to either really love the film or just be in the right state of mind to truly appreciate it.
Yeah, I always liken him to Kitano.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think of. I mean, Mochizuki reminds me of Kitano, but kind of a low budget Kitano. And I don't mean that as in he's a ripoff. I mean, his films don't tend to have as much polish as the Kitano classics do.
Yeah, and I mean, he was coming from a V cinema background anyway, so
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. He's more grounded in V cine. But yeah, I mean, this film tells want to choose my words very carefully here. The downward spiral that's referenced is basically this film tells the tale of a couple that is brought together and self-destructs over drugs.
yeah.
If I had to really boil it down, that's what this film is about.
Yeah, I mean, they meet. How did they meet?
In the restaurant, the cafe, and he drugs her.
Yes, so he's on a stakeout, isn't he?
Yeah, here's the thing, right, about this is he's an absolute shit. And it's not like, oh, he's a lovable shit. He's a shit. He basically gets her to come back to the hotel with him, or to go out on a date, sorry, and then he drugs her drink, not with date rape, but with meth to get her high. So it's not a date rape thing. It's a different kind of thing. Same level, but yeah.
Yeah.
And it's because he's addicted to the stuff too. So his whole thing is like, oh, well, I'll get her high, I'll be high, and then, we'll have a good time. But he's also very, very pushy. I swear I don't have the words for this. Not as in a shocking way. I just don't quite know how to describe it, because he's almost like he's a big baby.
Yeah, and he lacks impulse control.
And he lacks impulse control, and he's an addict at the same time. It's
but
kind
he
of
genuinely does fall for her.
He does fall for her, and this is part of the problem. Because of his upbringing and because of his reliance on the drugs, he's not very good at expressing his feelings. So the way they come out is quite self-destructive a lot of times.
Yeah, I think I quite liked that aspect of his character. Not the drugging her, of course, but I think what was interesting about how his character is portrayed early on is it's a bit of a, I don't want to say a trope or a staple, but it was a running thing through older Yakuza films, particularly in the 70s. And it sort of made a resurgence in the 90s where, they would just take a woman.
Yeah, and that's where this one's it's a bit of a push-pull if you're looking at the story, because on the one hand, it's got that typical, as Nathan said, it is a trope, where it was just Yakuza sees woman, likes woman, takes a woman, ugh.
Yeah, very sort of caveman-like.
Yeah, very sort of caveman, but it's not full on, because it's like he does it, but he also really, really falls for her and wants her to enjoy it.
Yeah, and I think he shows it. There's these little moments, like there's a scene early on where the boss that Fox was just talking about is admitted to hospital.
Yeah.
So they go to the hospital, and while he takes the girlfriend to the hospital as well because he wants to get her checked over. And while he's there, she tells him the doctor tells him to stop her from taking meth, doesn't he?
Yeah, because her heart can't handle it, because this is the weird thing. So to loop back, this is after their first night together. So he's been loading her up on meth all night, basically, and her body starts having a reaction to it. And it's quite clear what's happening, but he doesn't understand it. He just doesn't have the cognizant ability to see that her body's rejecting it.
Yeah.
He just thinks like, oh, haha, funny, you're shaking because it was so good and it's so amazing. And and he's genuinely, this is how this guy thinks. The relationship itself is toxic as hell. Okay. I hate saying that as in like using that, but this particular relationship is very, very toxic.
I think it starts that way.
It starts that way. It evolves. There's a bit of real love there, but it continues down that path, and I'll explain why later. Basically, yeah. So he just doesn't comprehend that her body can't take it. Like he doesn't even view it as an issue. He's just like, oh, get you to the hospital, get you checked out. But it's another excuse for him kidnapping her and keeping her as well. So it's kind of,
I shouldn't laugh, but it's the way he goes about it.
Yeah, it's weird. It's the best way to describe it, because it's not. This way I call it a bit of a black comedy, because on the one hand, it's kind of like so ridiculous that it's laughable, but not in the way, again, that Big Man is like ridiculous over the top. This is more grounded, and it's kind of like it's more expected behavior from someone of his ilk.
Yes.
And it's just weird. But anyway, yeah, gets to the hospital, and he tells her that this poor girl, Yoko is the character's name, she can't take the drugs because it messes up her heart. She'll die. And he like rejects that idea entirely. He's like, what do you mean she can't, take? You're a doctor. So what if she takes and her heart goes? You make her better.
Fix it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. This is the whole thing. This is how attached to the drugs he is at this point. I mean, he gives her a bit more, but I don't think he goes too far with it after that.
No, he does make a concerted effort after that, which plays into a scene later on.
Yeah, it does play into a scene a little later on, which is why I'm bringing it up. So yeah, so there's that, and then they spend more time with each other, and as they spend more time with each other, both of them do fall for each other more. But at the same time that this is happening, he's having a mental breakdown because of the drugs. So he's really losing it. He's getting to the point where it's not all the time, but all of those negative effects that you hear about for meth, the violent outbursts, the temper, the almost schizophrenia, all of that slowly starts to come out over the course of the film. And this is what his downfall is, if you like, because there's another thing where after this hospital scene happens, there's supposed to be oh wait, sorry, we need to back up, don't we? Because of the assassination attempt.
Yeah, see, the assassination attempt is that's the turning point of the film for me. I know you don't see it like that, but that's where he really takes a turn for the worse for me personally.
Which one are you? Okay, sorry, there's 2 assassination attempts. Which one are you talking about?
Him in the club.
Okay. Yeah, no, we need to back up here, and there's a reason. because I want to make a point. What is it with Toei Yakuza not being able to shoot for shit?
It's always been the way.
I,
And before that, they couldn't stab for shit.
I know. I've just noticed this trope where, so basically the premise is, well, he's during their first night together, he's supposed to be performing a hit. So because he's not around, his brother takes it upon himself to go do this hit. And he does this thing, which all seems to be, I've only seen this in Toei Yakuza films. They take this stance, right?
Wide legs.
Wide legs, arms straight, two hands on the revolver, couple of feet, maybe no more than 6 to 8 feet in front of them is their target, and they go bang, 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 and they never fucking hit anything.
No, and if they do, then it's usually guys like Sonny Chiba who will be able to hit a frigging coin from a mile away.
Yeah, I've just noticed this seems to be a Toei. This is like a Toei trope.
It's one extreme or the other.
One extreme or the other, as Nathan said. And yeah, sorry, I've got that in my notes because it just stuck out like a sore thumb, because obviously I watched a lot of Toei stuff over the last couple of weeks, and it's like seeing it again, I was just like, really? Especially with how close he is.
When you pull back into the 70s stuff, you will see that a hell of a lot more.
Yeah, I know that's where it originates from, so I'm not surprised.
Bumbling assassinations all over the place.
Yeah, so I don't know what it is. They're worse than stormtroopers. Genuinely.
Way worse.
You just look at it and go, wow. Anyway, sorry. Continue your thing. I just wanted to mention that because we skipped ahead because the hospital scene and everything comes after that.
Yeah, no, he goes, basically his boss has got cancer, and he's very loyal to his boss, in all fairness. He's given the opportunity to betray him, this, that, and the other, and he doesn't. He does carry those, although it's not a traditional Yakuza film in many senses.
To me, this is more of a film about an addict.
Yeah, absolutely. He does carry the code and take it seriously. And he talks at great length about, although his boss is terrible, and as Fox said, it's played mostly comedically. I mean, there's a scene of him playing a PS1 in the hospital.
Yeah, with some VR helmet attached to it.
VR helmet on, and then he shoots up with some meth in his IV, and he goes up to the roof and he's firing off 2 revolvers in the air, and then he drops dead.
Yeah, that's where I'm saying there's a lot of like black comedy in this film, and it is funny. The initial bits, they definitely are. If you take out the serious stuff in terms of how the relationship forms and things, there's the stuff that happens around them is quite ridiculous. But yeah, again, as the film goes on, you slowly delve into the psyche of the main character and of kind of the Yoko as well, the girl, because she sort of devolves with him.
Yeah, and she wants to.
That's the weird thing about this. It's like she wants to. This is a very honest look about what kind of a realistic toxic relationship looks like when you've got two people that end up feeding each other's issues, so to speak. Not necessarily an abusive one, even though there are elements of the relationship that start out abusive. It becomes highly consensual. It's real in a way, which I praise this film for. I will say this: it's not necessarily an easy watch. The dynamic of this relationship is a very honest look at how two people with deep-seated problems and have the addictive personalities, as it's called, where someone can easily become addicted to something if they start, because that's apparently a thing, and I don't say that to diminish it. I just don't know enough about the subject to categorically be like, yes, but I have heard within the science field that there is a diagnosis out there for someone who is like more prone to becoming addicted to, say, gambling or drugs or alcohol than someone else necessarily.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't know how true that is because I've never done deep research into it or anything. But so yeah, please don't misunderstand me there.
No, it's very, very true.
It does get dark, but it tries to keep. I think the point is the film tries to show the events that are happening from the point of view of the two main characters, rather than from the outside looking in.
Yes.
So it maintains this weird kind of, I don't know what you would call it. It's almost like a warped perception on the reality around them. And I don't mean warped as in it's trippy or psychedelic or Wong Kar-wai-ish. It's more just honest. the best way I could describe it, which is a
Yeah,
Mochizuki trait.
yeah, I think so too. I think that's a good way of describing it.
So yeah, so it's honest in that way. And again, like I said, that's a Mochizuki trait as far as I can tell from the other works I've seen of his. And also on her choice, right? We're going to jump ahead a bit here because I don't want to spoil this film because there's a lot of things that happen in the middle which kind of show this destruction over time, this self-destruction over time.
Yeah,
But there's a point where he goes off the rails and he cheats on her. It's the first time this happens in the film because he goes out and gets another addict and just takes her back to a hotel.
yeah,
This is where it changes because she sees what he wants, okay? And she also sees the pain he's in. So she makes a choice to start shooting up herself.
she'd only been using briefly before that, hadn't she?
Yeah, she hadn't been using, this is after the hospital. This was my point. But she makes this choice because she's like, well, if this is what you want, this is what I can be type thing. Because she wants to be his so badly at this point. She's hurting. So she self-destructs herself by saying, like, you know, you're hurting. So therefore I'm hurting. I want to be one with you. But that's the word she used. She says she wants to be one with him
Yeah,
because she wants to feel what he feels. She wants to be what he wants her to be. So she changes. This is where her actual real self-destruction starts. It's not so early because even though she falls for him, she doesn't really. She kind of keeps him stable. Like she's still in it, but she's still out of it enough to be a saving grace for him.
yeah. Because I mean, up to that point, where you know what you've just said, she catches him with the cheating on her with an addict. Things had been going pretty well.
Yeah,
He
and it
was
looked like he
using
was
and
going to turn his life around. Sorry.
yeah, he you know, he was still using but and selling drugs, but they sort of had this weird happy-ish esque mesh going on, you know,
Yeah,
and his brother's there with him and he's out selling drugs and things are going okay.
yeah, things are going okay. And it looks like, because his whole thing that he says at this point that he wants to do is he just wants to settle down with Yoko.
Yeah, because he's desperately looking for this family unit that he never had.
Yes, but equally, he can't give up the meth. And the only thing he knows how to do is to deal meth. It's like he knows how to kill people and deal meth. That's
Yeah,
the impression that's given. The problem is he's got an opportunity here to essentially go straight, but he chooses the other path entirely. When he sets up in his hometown, when they move back there to start a new life, his immediate thing is who's supplying, how can I deal?
that's right, because he goes straight to his childhood friend,
That's
doesn't
where
he?
I'm saying it's straight in there. This is where I'm saying it's a bit of an odd one where he's not really very redeemable in my eyes because he's just so far in it that the drugs are driving him. Initially, it's more the relationship up until this point. When he chooses this path, it just gets worse,
Yeah.
which then leads to him cheating on her, which then leads to her becoming an addict as well. So there's a glimmer of hope, and then he just does what most addicts do, where he just self-destructs. He just destroys it before it can even flower or become something that could redeem him or be what he really, really wants. He just destroys it.
Yes.
Basically, it's a good film if you like these kinds of Yakuza films. If you want to see something that's a bit of a more of a black comedy pseudo character study on basically a very toxic relationship with two people who have issues, this might be up your alley. Certainly stay away from it if it's not, because I could see how this film might be a bit much for a lot of people if they're not used to this kind of thing or this kind of
Yes.
storytelling. So, yeah,
I always say with Mokazuki, if you're a fan of Kitano, early Miike,
yes,
early Toyoda, check
you'll
it
like
out.
him. Yeah, no, absolutely.
I like this a lot on a rewatch.
Obviously, Nathan is talking about My Sassy Girl. Came out in 2001. Was directed by Kwak Jae-young, starring Cha Ti-hyun and Jun Ji-hyun. Her English name is known as Gianna Jun, so I will probably refer to her as Gianna or Jun. My Korean is terrible, so I apologies if I butchered any of those names. Yeah, so this was my first watch of this film. So a little bit of background for those that may not know it. It is the highest grossing comedy of all time in South Korea. It was a mega hit in East Asia in general because it was released simultaneously in Japan, Hong Kong, and South Korea. It won numerous awards at the Hong Kong Film Awards. I believe it was the Hong Kong Film Awards, sorry. And it has spawned many remakes.
It still does. There's another one coming out this year.
Yeah, so there's one coming out this year. There's an Indian remake, which I have no words when I read that. But yeah, there's a Chinese sequel called My Sassy Girl 2, which isn't an official sequel. It's like a pseudo sequel. There's also an official sequel produced in Korea called My New Sassy Girl. Some of the remakes that it got a 2017 TV series remake. It got a 2008 Japanese drama remake as well. The Korean TV series remake apparently is a historical period drama.
It actually looks quite good.
Okay, I don't know anything about it. I'll be honest, I know this film was highly successful. I saw it around back in the day, vaguely, but I never got around to watching it. Also, this film is based on a true story told in a series of blog posts written by Kim Ho-sik, who later adapted them into a fictional novel. For those who are interested, in the description of this video is a link that I will be including to the original Korean internet serial. I have it all archived.
Oh, interesting.
If you want to read that, it's all in Korean, so you have to translate it unless you're lucky enough to be able to read Korean. That will be in the description of this episode. So that's your surprise, Nathan.
Thank you. That's interesting. I want that link as well, please.
Yes, I will give it to you. I think the best way we should talk about this film is, so just to preface, sorry, me and Nathan both watched the director's cut of this film for this episode, and I believe it adds about 15 to 20 minutes of extra footage. It's a significant chunk. So, and the way this film is in the director's cut is it is presented in 3 acts. It is presented in the first half, second half, and overtime, as it's called. So we should probably approach this going through each segment, and then we can talk about the film as a whole. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, let's just go for it.
Okay, you can start, mate, because I know this is your favorite. So, and I'm sure you're wanting to pick my brain on what I thought of this. So,
yeah, it starts at the end, doesn't it? Kind of.
It starts at the end of the second half, and then
Yes,
it
that's
flashbacks.
right.
Yep.
Because they've buried a time capsule under a tree on a mountain with the promise to meet up there 2 years after the events that have transpired. And then after that, we go back to their actual meeting, which is on a train station, I believe, isn't it?
Train platform, yep.
Train platform, where she is drunk off her face and she's kind of half hanging over the edge, isn't she?
Yes. Which implies she's going to get hit by a train, so he saves her. Then they're on the train together. I don't want to spoil all the gags in this because there's quite a few good ones. But basically, she collapses on the train, so he takes her back to a hotel. I want to kind of preface here again that there's another thing that happened. The ending for this film was spoiled for me in the opening act.
Oh, really? How so?
I called it.
Okay, well, that surprises me. Just as simple as that.
Yeah. I don't know what it was. I think it was because they mention it twice. Spoilers, by the way. So we are going to kind of get into spoiler territory on this one. If they hadn't emphasized that particular thing, which leads to the ending, I probably would have discounted it. But because they kept coming back to it 2 or 3 times, it was pretty obvious that, yeah.
That's where it was going.
That's where it was going, yeah. Now, what's funny enough is I still really enjoyed the ending. It didn't spoil the ending at all for me. Okay, I'm going to be completely open here. This film made me feel things. I don't normally get emotional with films.
I cried 3 times.
For me, this film, I didn't like all of it. I have some really serious issues with this film that we'll get into, but I still definitely enjoyed it and was not expecting it to, like touch me, so to speak, in the ways that it did. So I still definitely really enjoyed this film. My biggest problems stem from the first act, actually.
That's interesting, actually, because I'd seen this many years ago and had good memories of it. But I remembered it being, this is going to sound like a strange comment, but I remembered it being funnier. Whereas this time around, I was more emotionally hit by it, if that makes any sense. It's still a very funny film.
Yeah. I mean, okay, I guess I'll just out what my... Actually, no. Let's not out what my issues are with it. I want to know, because Nathan, you've told me that this film is very divisive. Nathan has a stronger relationship and understanding of the history of this film than I do, outside of what I've been able to read and gathered. So, Nathan, we haven't talked about this off air properly. Can you explain to me why this film is divisive and what people's problems are with it?
Well, I haven't seen, from my experience with the film, most people that I've ever talked to, or when I've seen it posted about, talked about, what have you, it's been overwhelmingly positive.
I thought some issues, people had issues with the girl. Now, when I say the girl, by the way, that's literally the character's name. The girl is Jun Ji Hun.
Yeah, I forget what her character's name is now.
It's the girl. It's the girl. That's what it says in the script.
Just the girl.
Yes. So I'm not saying that to be derogatory. That's what she's called.
Oh, that's interesting. I thought she actually had a name.
I think she does, but she's not listed as that on the cast list.
Ah, right. Okay, I'm following now. Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Because I basically, what I gathered from the posts I read on this and some of the discussions I've seen in different groups and things is that, like, the girl character seems to be the one that is divisive. Like, some people really don't like her or they absolutely love her.
Yeah, that's just what I was about to say.
Okay, so can you explain and kind of go into that for me a little bit?
I mean, and like I say, historically, I've seen nothing but praise for this film, but I've noticed in recent years there does seem to be this not backlash, but certainly more of a divisive opinion over it, purely because of her character.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people seem to take issue with. I've seen her described as a bully, which is kind of fair. I've seen her described as not very representative of Korean women, which is odd. And I've also, what was this? I saw a comment recently, and I'm not sort of singling anyone out with this, just in case you made this comment and you're listening.
This sets up kind of a point that I want to make about how I felt about the film. So, and it's also giving me more insight to the general feelings of the film. So,
but I saw a post about it recently, and there was somebody talking about it and how I can't remember the exact description that he used. It was coming from a man, and it was something along the lines of highly strung, madcap, pixie girl bitch, I think it was. And I think that does her a massive disservice.
Yeah, I didn't get that impression at all. Okay, so here's why I find this odd. My biggest problem with this film is the male character.
Okay.
She carries it every single time she is on screen. Her charisma, her presence is amazing. It really puts life into the film. Anytime he's left on his own to carry in the first act, he just doesn't bring it to my mind. He's quite, like, I get that he's supposed to be an idiot, I suppose, but it's like he's 25. My biggest problem with this film, if I had to pick a problem, and this is the thing which I still like the film and I still like the story that's being told, but my biggest issue with it is this feels like the kind of story that should have been told between two high school teenagers, because he's 25, she's 24, they don't know how to communicate. He's an absolute just lost cause.
Okay, sorry, right.
No, think about this. Think about it for a minute. He doesn't know how to communicate with her at all. This is a 25-year-old guy who can't talk to a girl.
Yeah, I mean, he's described in the synopsis as a dweeb, which is an interesting term. I think for me, he's a slightly sheltered nerd, for lack of a better term, with no goals, which isn't a knock on the character. You know, we've all been at that point.
No, I mean, it's the character archetype, but my biggest problem is, like, a lot of the problems that this film presents, okay, because this is ultimately a story of two people and their relationship. A lot of the problems this film presents could easily be solved if he just, like, expressed himself.
Yeah, agreed.
And this is my big problem. And I know that's not what the point of this film is, by the way, but in the first half, it's felt particularly strongly because of just how much time is spent just with him. And it really kind of, for me, again, this was my first time watch, this almost killed the film for me before it got off the ground. On one level, it's like, it's funny, yes, But then when you realize it's continuous, okay, I'll give you an example. When he gets drunk, he wants to take revenge on her for the train incident that we talked about at the beginning, where she falls.
Yeah, okay. You're right.
Where she she passes out drunk and he has to take her to a hotel. And he has decided that he's going to take revenge on her by doing the same thing.
Which is completely dumb to start.
She's not even on the fucking train.
No.
She's not even near him. She's not even with him. She's not even the strangest thing. To me, this is what I mean about like his character initially.
Yeah.
It's like, hang on a minute, where is she? Why is he doing this? Where is she? Because he's talking like she's there, but she's not. She's not even anywhere near him throughout the entire scene. He's out with his mates, gets shit-faced, and then is on the train on the way back home by himself. But he's going to take revenge on her by what exactly?
Yeah, I think he was sort of hoping that she would reciprocate the favor that, how he took her to the hotel, this, that, and the other. But it's incredibly ill-conceived.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not even like, because he even goes to the wrong station before he even calls her. That's what I'm saying. This is where it's like really...
Yeah.
There's a lot with his character that does not work for me at this stage in the film. Now, the first half mainly centers around him. She comes in and then there's like segments of her involvement, but it's mostly around him.
Yeah, because the first act, I think it's pretty fair to say that he also kind of doesn't like her.
Sort of, but then he does. But he also does really creepy shit, like stare at her while she's sleeping and like, oh, she's so pretty. Passed out in this bed, but she's beautiful.
Yeah, I didn't see that in a creepy way, though.
I did, because...
No, I didn't.
I'm sorry, but okay, here's the thing which made it creepy for me. His face was like in hers for no reason other than he was just ogling her. Now, if he'd been across the room in the chair, which was there across the room, and not like breathing down her neck, it wouldn't have been...
in his defense, he did want to have a look at the necklace.
I suppose, but this is where like I have issues with this character, and because usually I don't have problems with characters that are kind of creep, or they're goofy, or they're a bit dumb, or there's just something about the way this is put together in this first act that really doesn't work for me with him. She is great. Anytime she is active, she carries the scenes. Like she really, really does.
And it's a demanding performance as well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, because he plays off of her in a lot of respects. And I think that for me, my problem with the film is this. To me, it's a 5-star film that is held back slightly by this particular act. Once you get into the second half and overtime, it's perfect. I may not necessarily agree with everything that happens because I feel like by the time he chooses to get his act together is like way, way, way too late. But again, I can sort of suspend disbelief to see that. But the amount of times she tells him exactly what to do for her and he just doesn't register what it means.
Interesting.
That I find difficult to believe.
Okay.
But again, I've been in relationships with demanding women, I suppose, that do a similar thing. And it's like, those are the easiest ones because they give you all of the signals.
So do you mean because he's not picking up I'm trying to think of a way to word this. Because he's not... Because they sort of start off more as friends, don't they?
Yeah, but she's giving him all... To my mind, like, this is the thing about the entire film, this act especially, and even more so in the second half. She makes it abundantly clear she likes him. I mean, to me, watching it,
She blows hot and cold.
You see, maybe this is just a me thing. Because of her consistency over time, that negates that.
Yeah.
If you look at each incident in a microcosm,
yeah,
then yes, hot and cold. But the fact that it's like it goes on for so long, it's like, dude, get a grip.
Yeah, no, I can see where you're coming from.
I mean, because she tells him her dreams, she tells him her fantasies, she tells him, it's this part of the film is done really well, by the way. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. This is just something which, until it started to pick up a little bit, it didn't really work for me, and it's the only thing which holds it back from being a 5-star film. And it's not even a case of like they're teasing the relationship. It's like this guy just genuinely, I mean, even when at one point when she like basically puts him on the spot, he's like, "Muh."
Yeah, see, I liked that aspect of it purely because I think it plays into it plays into him.
I mean, if he's genuinely supposed to be dumb, then okay, I guess. But
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's, I don't know if I'd even classify him as dumb. I mean, he is a bit dumb, yeah, but he's also had that sheltered upbringing. He makes a point of saying that his parents actually raised him like a girl to the point that he thought his penis would drop off.
yeah, I mean, which is hilarious, you know, but they don't do a lot to play on that after mentioning that, apart from he just wears pink, which is kind of weird. I thought they were going to use that to like do something. This is what I mean, like, especially at 25. And this is where I'm saying it would be more believable to me if they were both younger, even if they were just like maybe 20. But it's like they're at a stage in life where really most people, and I do mean most people, have enough social savvy or experience that they can like work it out. And this is the other weird thing, right? He's presented at the beginning of the film as being a bit of a, he dates around a lot. Like he just goes after women and he likes to date. Like he doesn't necessarily get anywhere, but he likes to date. He wants to do. That's kind of played as like a thing. So it's not like he's presented as this virgin who just is a bit wet behind the ears and doesn't know anything.
True, yeah.
So it's like you can't even really give him that.
No.
I love this film, genuinely. It was really, really sweet. There's lots of cute moments. It's hilarious. We'll get into a bit more, but there's just something about the first act that, again, for me, if his character was just a bit more on the ball, it would really have elevated her performance rather than it just. Do you get where I'm coming from? It's a bit.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and also another thing, an issue I have with the first half is the pacing. So the way this film kind of works is you have what's happening between him and her, and then it goes into either like a weird scenario segment or a fantasy segment, I call it. And well, I call it a fantasy segment. So like she's describing a story she's written.
Yeah, she'll make him read one of her scripts.
Yeah, it plays out on screen as like a mini movie. And then it's got, you know, if he daydreams, it'll play out on screen. You know, it's that classic sort of thing. However, there's a point, I think it's when it's her birthday, and he's like, something happens where there's a screw up, and then it's her birthday. She emails him, shout out to the Lycos email client, by the way. That's a throwback. She emails him that it's her birthday tomorrow, don't screw it up. You know, hope you did something for me. And then it kind of immediately goes into another crazy scenario with the birthday, and there's no breathing space between. So at this point, I think they've gone through 3 different scenario gags back to back without any breathing space. And that kind of took away from it a bit for me in that at that point in the film, because it just kind of, it seemed to lean too much into the, oh, this crazy thing happens. Now this crazy thing happens. Now that crazy thing happens. You know what I mean? It was a bit like 1, 2, 3, without anything in between, any time to breathe, any time for any development between the characters or any real explanation of what happened in between. It was just kind of gag, 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 gag.
Yeah, for sure. See, I think the birthday, her birthday, is when, for me, when it truly became a relationship, for want of a better word.
Yes, I mean, this is the problem I have with it. It's like what happens in the birthday scene is highly, highly important, and I don't want to spoil that for people. It's very important to the development of that, to them as characters, but it's done in the same gag way that the previous scene was done in, that led to nothing. So it's kind of, it just feels like it's a bit much all at once.
Yeah, I can see that.
I mean, is there anything else you want to point out from the first act?
No, because I think it ends. I think the first act ends on the birthday scenario, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And there's, like I said, the first act is my main gripe with the film. Everything else is good outside of the general thing about his character, you know, and his arc, you know, kind of like, because it does move along after this. Like, I really think the film comes alive in the second half. And this is where I'm not sure if maybe watching the director's cut does it a disservice, because obviously I haven't seen the theatrical cut, so I don't know that extra 20 minutes of footage.
Yeah, and it'd been way too long for me to pick out the 20 minutes, to be quite honest.
So I don't know where that is inserted into, because if it's the first act, then that actually makes kind of sense, because it does, to me, it feels a bit bogged down. But again, that's just me. That's just me. So
Not to spoil anything, but during the birthday scene, which no spoilers really, but it involves soldiers.
yes,
Do you happen to notice that the soldier that was with them, he changed rifles? Really weird thing I spotted.
I didn't notice it because I'll be honest, I wasn't totally in the film at this point because of the gag. Because when I saw they were setting up the gag, I was just kind of like, really? Another one?
Yeah, when they're inside the building, he has sort of a small submachine gun looking thing. But then when they go outside, he's got is it an not an M16,
The
the newer one.
M14, would it be? Or the M4? Sorry.
M4, that's
Yeah.
it. Yep. Which I thought was a weird I don't know what the word is. Continuity.
Way!
It was a yeah, that word error. But yeah, that was just, I don't know why I wrote that down.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I didn't notice it because, like I said, at that point, I was still feeling a bit iffy on the film. Because again, there's just, for some reason, I don't, like I said, I've tried to put it into words, but it's a very difficult one for me to describe because I know it's something, I know a lot of people praise the guy's performance in this, and maybe it's just not relatable enough to me at this stage.
No, I see that.
Yeah, anyway, I guess we should move into the second half.
Yeah, I didn't actually know where it starts though. But basically, they're getting on a lot better in the second half, and it moves on in the way that it starts becoming more of a girlfriend boyfriend relationship, for lack of a better term.
Even though, and this is what I mean about part of the
Mm.
denseness. Okay, just to highlight this because this is an important point. There are times where she refers to him as her boyfriend, sorry, and he is just constantly like, she's a friend. So again, to me, there's this major disconnect happening.
Yeah.
The thing is, what's odd is like she is really trying. This is what becomes kind of obvious to me at this point in the film. She is really trying to like show him her.
But she's also not.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So she's also not. Okay, I guess this is kind of this is a spoiler. She's supplanting. She's looking for her old boyfriend in him.
Yeah, essentially a replacement.
Yeah, that's what she's looking for. Which, to be fair, a lot of people with not very much relationship experience will do if they have an idealized version of somebody in their head.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's what she's doing. But yeah, but even still, even if you allow for that, she's still showing a lot of her likes to him. So to me, it's kind of confusing because it's like, again, she's over here doing all of these things, and some of it is colored by what we just talked about, but there's also a lot of it that is the real her, which is part of what she realizes later on when she's on that blind date with that guy.
Yeah.
So it's still this weird sort of push-pull thing. It's cute, it's lovable, there's lots of good gags, but it's still just kind of, it doesn't really move forward like it does, but it doesn't. There's no progress for them. They just do more together.
Yeah, it's like a series of dates and
Yeah,
gags.
montages and gags, and
they all work.
yeah, they're all cute. They all work. The thing with the parents, I recognized her father as an actor, but I don't know where I've seen him before.
I don't know off the top of my head, but he is recognizable for sure.
Yeah, because they do this thing where he takes her back to the parents. It happens a couple times, but it's revealed that basically the father is where she gets the drinking habit from, and also the inability to hold drinks, because anytime she has more than 3, she just bonks out.
Yeah, she just blacks out. He blacks out way more spectacularly though.
Yes, that's true. He does. He's more experienced in it, and also there's a lot of there's some context given as to her parents don't want him with her because they don't see him as having a future. even though she loves him. And he overhears this. This is what I don't understand. And maybe this is a Korean cultural thing, because I know that family acceptance in dating and status is very important there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like he overhears that conversation, that argument, and she's sticking up for him all the way. Like, she is 100% sticking up for him and her feelings. And he still fucking doesn't get it.
But again, she does blow hot and cold, and he does mention at multiple points that there is, gaps of time where he won't hear from her for like a week or what have you.
Yeah, true. I mean,
so I don't think he's completely to blame.
No, I mean, it's just, to me, it's like after hearing that type of argument, even if it took a week, I would still be like, that still would stick out in my mind that somebody's done that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think the thing as well is there is there's a huge part of her as well holding back.
Yeah.
And I can't really say too much about that because it's like a huge spoiler.
Yeah, so the problem is with us discussing this film, because we don't want to spoil it, because it is a beautiful film. It is really, really good. Check it out if you like a rom-com. Is that because of the nature of the way the film lays out its story, a lot of blanks are filled in at the end. So
yeah,
it's kind of difficult for us to discuss it without completely spoiling it. These films are quite special, so we want to kind of give you a taste of what they are as well as discuss our feelings on them.
Yeah, and I think the spoiler here, even though you saw it coming, I didn't. The first time I watched it, I think the signposts are there, but I don't think it takes away from the impact.
No, well, that's why I was trying to explain, like, it didn't ruin the ending for me. I saw it coming, but it didn't ruin anything.
Yeah.
My biggest issue with, as the film progresses, is it takes him so long to decide to get his act together. This is what's a bit difficult too. There's no real strong sense of time. There's hints as to how long it's been. Like, it's been, at some point, it's been a few weeks, then it's been 100 days, then it's been this, that, the other. But I would say at least between part 1 and part 2, there's probably a couple of years.
There must be.
And this is the problem I have with it for the male character, is there's not much character growth for him over those 2 years.
Yeah,
she grows. She does grow. She's still dealing with her things, which get revealed later on, but there's a lot more character growth for her.
Yeah.
He just stays the same. And hard to explain, but it's weird because, again, it's like I'm looking at it like there's all these opportunities presented to him. Even though she's holding back, there's still opportunities that I'm pretty sure if he was more on the ball and more assertive, and I don't mean assertive as in like Yakuza assertive or anything like that.
No.
But if he was just more honest and expressed himself properly, which he says in his head throughout the entire film, you get his inner monologue, his inner dialogue.
Yeah.
And there's always that thing of like, well, if you feel that way, say it.
And then the one time that he does, it fucks up.
Yeah, because he messes it up a bit.
Yeah.
And it's like, even something as simple as, I don't know, holding hands or trying to do things, he just doesn't. It's like he's doing it, but it's almost as if he's doing it for her, but not. I don't. Again, it's so hard for me to explain because I've never quite seen a film that goes through this where it drags it out for so long.
Yeah, because they never even, spoiler alert, they never even kiss.
No,
not once in the film.
And honestly, too, when they pull that gag, because they pull a gag where they're close to doing it, but he opts out of it. Basically, it's not even an accident. He does it intentionally. That to me completely killed the momentum at that point, because it's like, what?
Yeah,
because if it had been he slipped, basically, if they'd have stuck to the comedy for that moment and gone, he slipped.
The scene in the rain at the gate.
Yes, where he rings the bell. He ends up ringing the bell because he
I
does
thought
that
he
thing.
pressed the bell by accident.
It doesn't look like it because his hand is placed on the bell.
Okay, yeah, true.
Because
Interesting.
I've forgotten what that's called. There's a name for that.
That move, yeah.
Yeah, I think what was it?
It was in the Yakuza games, wasn't it?
Yeah,
It was
It's
a side quest, sub
yeah,
story.
because it's a J drama. It's a J and K drama trope. It's where the girl is against the wall, and the guy puts his hand. He outstretches his arm and he puts his hand next to her head, and then it's like they're really close, and then he closes in. I've
I
forgotten what
can't
it's
remember
called.
the name. But yeah, I thought that was an accident, personally.
It didn't come across that way to me because there was no
No.
movement from his hand.
True.
Like when you watch, and I know this is going to sound hypercritical, but this is just how I see things. When you watch his arm, it doesn't like jutter. He doesn't trip. He doesn't stumble into it, which would be more comedic.
Yeah.
He just kind of, because it cuts to her anticipating the kiss, and then it just ding dong.
Yeah, and it's over.
Which gives the impression to me that he pressed he did it intentionally.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. I just saw it as a mistake.
No, I mean, that's what I thought was going to happen initially, but then it didn't. It was kind of like, oh, okay.
And I mean,
what
the thing
else?
is, he only really gets his act together on the 2-year break.
Well, that's my point. So you fast forward through to the overture, and basically pre the overture or in the overture, as he decides, it cuts back to this time capsule thing when they do this time capsule and they say they're going to meet together. And this is another trope which constantly happens too, by the way. They both think the same thing at opposite times. So it's like they'll both be chasing each other, but they'll be going in the opposite directions because they're trying to find each other, or like they'll be so close to one another, but just far enough apart where they don't see each other. So yeah, so the time capsule thing happens.
Yeah.
And then they bury that. And then he doesn't think 2 years is a long time. She feels like it goes by in a blink of an eye. But he also decides to get his act together in these 2 years, which again, for me, feels a bit weird at this point because so much time has passed. And then she said she's going to go away and then they'll meet back. And then he decides to get his act together, even though he's already confessed his feelings in the letter that goes into the time capsule.
But see, it makes sense to me that he gets his act together while he can't be with her.
True, because he's got the time, but it still, to me, feels like it's a bit too late.
True.
I don't know. It's
a hard one to discuss without going into the reveal.
Yeah, and it's also a bit funky because to me, it's like, again, he just has all of these opportunities to do things and
he doesn't.
He just doesn't.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm saying like she carries the film because in all these scenes, she's really cute. She's charismatic. She plays her character well. She does the abusive thing well. I mean, I said the abusive thing. To me, it's not very abusive because I've had friends that I've known that literally I can quote her saying of, wanna die.
Wanna die, yeah.
I've literally had female friends in the past that's what they would say.
Yeah, it's not abusive. She's just assertive.
Yeah. And I mean, there is some physical violence, but it's never
to hurt him.
No, it's more slapstick. And then even he admits later on that when she's been hitting him, it didn't actually hurt.
Yeah.
So.
But you should pretend that it does.
But the premise of this film is that they're basically destined for each other. But they both, for whatever reason, her reasons get revealed at the end again. This is what's hard for me. I can understand her reasoning because it's given and it makes sense. It's very human. On the other hand, with him, it's a bit.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Again, it's tough to sort of get around.
So, Nathan, I suppose you keep mentioning the reveal and how it's difficult to talk about things without really getting into the reveal. You think we should get into the reveal? Is it worth doing? You reckon? You have some stuff to say around it?
I think so, personally.
Okay, so just so everyone is aware, This reveal is a pretty big spoiler in the film. So if you have never seen this film and you don't want essentially the ending ruined or the penultimate sequence ruined into the ending, or just go to the end of the podcast and rewind by like a minute if you want to hear about what's coming up next, because the last 2 minutes will be that preamble where I talk about what the next episode is. However, yeah, obviously Nathan's got a lot to say about this, so we're going to get into it. But again, if you don't care about spoilers, great, stay with us. But we usually spoil stuff in a minor way, but this is something which kind of really impacts the film. It's one of those ending spoilers that is like, it changes everything for some people. So, yeah. Basically, the ending is to deal with grief. Excuse me, is the reveal, I would say. Because
absolutely.
So the setup for this is they go and they bury this time capsule and they agree to re-meet in 2 years under this tree. And I'm not going to get into the full details of it, but 2 years come and he's there, right? Over the 2 years, as I've talked about before, he gets his act together, right? So it's kind of semi-autobiographical because it goes into that he wrote a blog about his sassy girl, which is obviously what this film is based off of.
And gets a movie deal.
Yeah, and then he gets a movie deal where he made a film about it, and he's doing all of this to try and kind of get noticed and to get himself together and to show how much he loves her, right? That's part of his motivation for this. So it's all very sweet, if not a bit over the top. Not knowing that this was based on an original like piece of work before I watched the film, it kind of threw me because it felt a bit weird. But when I was doing research on the film afterwards and I learned that it was based on a true story, that it's like, oh, okay, or at least an internet serial, if you will, then it kind of made more sense. But I will admit that initially when I saw it, I thought this was a bit over the top. But, again, it's fine. Anyway, the 2 years pass. He goes to the time capsule. She doesn't turn up. She leaves him hanging. And then I think, is it another year that passes?
Yeah, it's a year before she goes back there, isn't it?
Yeah, so basically he revisits it. I don't think it's every day, is it? Because it's far out, isn't it? So he doesn't go there every day, but he goes there quite a few times over the course of the year.
The scene with the old man, it's hinted at that he's a regular there, isn't it?
Yeah, he's a regular, but it's not necessarily daily.
Which is a question as well with the old man scene.
Yeah.
I want to get your take on this. Was that him in the future, or was that because she'd always said that she wanted to meet a person from the future? Now, is that him from the future, or is that just a random old man?
Honestly, I thought it was just a random old man who was sort of a caretaker.
Because I've seen people say both.
I could see thematically how that might be a thing, but equally, like, would that not be a stretch? Why wouldn't he just be there himself?
Totally with you.
I do think that's a bit of a stretch.
I do as well.
But yeah, anyway, to get into the reveal, so I suppose what the reveal is, the big reveal to me, there's two, but the big one is her letter in the time capsule explains something which is hinted at the earlier on in the film where she's experienced a loss. So what's actually happened is she's lost her partner. He died suddenly. It's not explained exactly how. He just suddenly died while they were together. So part of her pulling the stunts that she does with the guy is he looks kind of like her former lover. And she's trying to, as we said earlier on in the episode, she's trying to kind of replicate their behaviors and their dates through him.
Yeah.
The stuff he did for her, she's telling him to do for her because she's trying to kind of replace him with a clone almost, but not quite.
Yeah, and I think because there's a short montage, isn't there, where you don't actually see the ex,
No, it's
But
all
you
done
do
from first
see,
person.
yeah, but you do see the rose scene and things like that.
Yeah, it's all replayed out as if from the ex's perspective. Um, so there's all of that that kind of ties into it, and that is explained in the letter and how she says she wasn't necessarily ready to move on from him, and that's also why she doesn't turn up at the 2 year mark, because the 2 year mark was too soon for her, because for whatever reason she hadn't processed it or got over it.
Yeah, and I think I think she acknowledges that she has feelings for, I can't remember his name in the film. The geeky guy, the main
Yeah,
guy.
yeah,
I, she acknowledges those feelings, but I think the guilt of acknowledging those feelings is what holds her back.
yeah. That's what she kind of talks about, because it's kind of, this sounds crazy talking about it, but it kind of, it makes sense if somebody's been through this. Now, obviously, everyone processes things differently. So we're not saying that I'm not saying that everybody processes this type of event this way. Um, but basically, she felt that initially her ex sent him to her to fill
Yeah,
the hole. But then as she started to develop feelings for him, she felt guilty about it. And she felt like her ex would be jealous,
yeah,
because she kept thinking about how her ex would feel. Um, Now, during all of this time as well, she's visiting the ex's mother consistently to talk about things, to help process and deal with the grief. So there's kind of that sort of thing going on. And the thing is too, the yeah, I'm not going to talk about the super end because I want to keep that a surprise for people. I won't talk about that. So
I
we won't go.
cried like a baby though.
You did? Oh,
Absolute sobbing mess. Straight up. I mean, I'm usually pretty bad for crying at films anyway. I'm a bit of a big baby, but
right.
that hit me.
It just rained for me. Didn't cry or anything. It just started raining. It was just one of those nights.
No, I was a mess, and I'm not afraid to admit that.
Yeah. No, I mean, to be fair, I'm not either, but I, you know, just started raining. So anyway, it's yeah, I mean it's pretty emotional, and it's a nice ending. Um Equally, it's kind of one of those endings that when you look back on it, it can make you laugh a little bit, because it just, the way it feeds into everything and stuff.
I was just about to say the way it ties back
Yeah,
is really good.
yeah, it's really well done. But as someone who saw it coming very early on, I was kind of like laughing and just like, well, all of this shit could have been avoided.
Yeah,
But obviously, that's not how life works. So I get that. But yeah, I think it does do a very good job of presenting grief.
that's the
Um,
main point I wanted to get across as well.
yeah, so I'll let you talk, obviously.
No, I mean, not a huge amount to add to that, really. I just really wanted to hammer home for me that it really does, aside from being a great love story, a really sweet little film, really funny in places, I think it's got this really great core message once you know the reveal about dealing with grief and doing it at your own pace in your own time. I think the way it presents, the whole 2 year thing, and hopefully she'll be ready by then. But then she waits another year as well because she has to make sure that she is really ready for this. I think it's a really great message in there, not to rush into things and to deal with, things on your own terms, as it
Yeah,
were.
absolutely. I mean, it's kind of that whole thing, isn't it? The theory that, for most people, in order for a relationship to truly be good, like for both parties, and to really work, the idea is that you each handle your shit,
Yeah,
so that, when you're it's that whole principle of you have to be happy with yourself in order to make somebody else happy.
Yes, exactly.
Which I firmly agree with. I know that doesn't always work for people, as in some people find happiness within each other and they're able to process their issues through each other and come out the other side of that. But I do think it's a very good message in that regard, regardless of how it's executed. And obviously, like I said, everyone handles things differently. And this is where I think the fact that the ending happens the way it does, it kind of does make sense that she has more character growth during it, but equally that kind of makes the guy worse, in my opinion, because it's like she's got all of this character growth while she's going through a horrific event, a transformative life event for most people. And it's like the guy is just not he's just fumbling along and not really growing until the very end without dealing with anything. I don't know. Again, it just, to feed back into my point, it just makes it seem even more ridiculous in a way.
Yeah, see, I think I absolutely see where you're coming from, but I think the whole process, I think it's interesting how the whole process improves him as a person as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I mean, it should, right? Because I kind of feel like when you meet the person that you really want to be with, that you have that kind of chemistry with, it's supposed to bring out the best in both people, right? In an ideal
Yeah.
world, unlike, you know, Yakuza in Love, where they both turn into drug addicts and self-destruct.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's like we're talking about very different films here. So this episode has been a bit of a roller coaster, but you know, again, it's kind of, it's a good thing. And you know, like I said, this film is truly beautiful. It's great, and but I don't know. There's part of me that still kind of like is like, okay, we've had an explanation for her and everything she's done, but what about this guy?
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, and not to jump around too much either, but now we've actually spoiled it, or we're talking spoilers. I think it's quite interesting how the reveal, going back to what you said earlier on in the review about the negative opinions out there on her character, because I did look some more up briefly. She's a bully, she's a narcissist, there's this, there's that. And I think the reveal adds an interesting spin on that as well, because she genuinely does feel, I mean, because she uses him, for lack of a better term, she uses him to try and recapture.
Yeah, initially, but she explains that too. That
Yeah,
initially that's what she was doing, but then she realized, and that's part of where she suddenly got a bit afraid and felt guilty, because it was initially it was that thing of, you know, um, sort of trying to fill the hole and using him to get over, but then it became more for her.
yeah.
Now,
And you can genuinely tell that she's sorry for that.
yeah, and that takes a lot of courage to admit and to get over. So it's like,
Exactly. This is my point.
you know, and also that shows how much she actually cares for him.
Yeah.
Not never mind just her own thing, because I mean, and that's part of it, you know. And I think going back to the beginning of the film, referencing this, is it the day? Isn't it the day of the funeral? The evening of the funeral when she's on the train platform? Because I know she explains the timeline, and isn't it? It's like the day after or the evening of the funeral. She's on the platform because she's supposed to be doing that thing, or was it
I
like a
think
week
it's,
after? I know it's really close.
or is it the anniversary of the funeral?
It might be in the anniversary. I can't quite remember.
But yeah, it's one of those things.
So yeah, I mean, again, that is something which it's nicely done, and it does again for some people like recontextualize the spin on the film, and it also does explain her actions. You know, and to my mind, it doesn't necessarily justify them, but it's a very human thing. Um,
Yeah, and I think for me as well, the fact that I don't truly believe that she ever leads him on either.
no, well, this is the problem I had when we were talking earlier, and you were talking about how she goes hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. You know, for me, the consistency of the positive things and the consistency of, you know, especially like just take the birthday for example. It's my or it's or it's our 100 days, you better have done something for me or come up with something for me. And then the birthday, it's like, okay, if they're just friends, you don't reference that. You know what I mean? Like,
No,
especially the
no.
100-day thing. The 100-day thing is very much a couples thing in Korea.
Yeah, but then at that point, they've also built something to that point, and she's also feeling guilty about what
Yeah.
they've built to that point. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm kind of mixed on it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I could see that, I suppose, but it's still denseness on his part.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, he is a very dense man.
Yeah, which again is something I kind of struggle to get with because I just can't really relate to that personally. Um, so it's a bit weird, and that's not to say like it's just I couldn't relate to the character or his way of thinking is what I mean. It's not me trying to compare myself to the character. It's just
No,
I
totally.
just couldn't relate to a lot of how he handles stuff, so to speak.
No, I fully appreciate that.
So, but overall, again, great film. I can see why it was a very big success at the time. Um, I didn't have a problem with the girl again. Like I said, I'll fight anyone on that. Because,
Totally.
eh, again, I've had friendships where there's been that sort of semi-physical slapstick, friendly humor, communication, punch in the arm, you know, I've seen people get slapped on the face, sort of thing, And again, as he mentions in that scene at the restaurant, he says it doesn't hurt. He just acts like it does. So it's like when you have that revelation as well, it's like, well, okay, she's not actually out to hurt this guy, which
No.
obviously she's not. But, it's like, okay, that's just their communication style to a degree. So
I think now we've spoiled it as well. I'm kind of interested. Oh, man. Well, no, it's still a spoiler. I'm interested to see the sequel, even though everybody hates it.
yeah, you're talking about the official sequel, right? Because like
My
I said,
New Sassy Girl. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't read the synopsis on that or anything, so I don't even know what it would be about.
That's what's got me fascinated because apparently it's ended. The film ends how we know it ends. We haven't spoiled that very last scene, but then the sequel is about him and Cha Tae-hyun comes back, but apparently she's gone to take refuge in a Buddhist temple and he's trying to get over it.
What?
Exactly. Now I'm fascinated to see it. I didn't realize. I thought it was a completely standalone story.
That sounds a bit unnecessary.
How
It sounds like it
unnecessary.
kind of ruins the ending of the first film.
That seems to be the main complaint about it. People sort of, I'm going to ignore this film ever happened kind of thing.
Because I would have been curious in a sequel if it was a genuine continuation, as in a pure continuation of the relationship and stuff. That could have been interesting, and how they sort of reacclimate to being a couple properly. Maybe taking that next step towards marriage. That would have been interesting.
I wonder if maybe that was his intent, but he couldn't get her back for the sequel.
Oh,
Perhaps.
He couldn't get her back. She's not in it.
I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Right.
I don't even know if he worked with her post because it's the same director.
Yeah. They did a film together. Windstalkers, I think it's called.
Oh, Windstruck.
Yeah. That one came out after Sassy Girl, didn't it? Or was it before? I think it was after.
No, that was definitely after. I think that's about 06, 07, something
from
like
what
that.
I saw, there's like they're both in it, and it's done by the same director. And I think there's also been instances where there's been like little cameos in projects, from my understanding. Just like real.
Perhaps she just didn't want anything to do with a sequel then.
I don't know. Again, I don't know. I don't have it up in front of me. It's not something I looked into because I kind of saw it and then it was like, oh, this is not there's like a million of these remakes and sequels, and
Windstruck's 2004. She is, yeah.
I believe he's got. No, what I mean is he's got like a bit part or something. It's like a cameo.
Oh, okay.
Where he turns up, I think.
Yes. Oh, that's a clever little cameo. Cameo as guy on platform.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
That's where I'm saying I think there were loads of little references throughout a couple of different films. So, yeah. But, I mean, it's a great film. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would going in. Not saying that I thought I would hate it, because I didn't think that. It's just, especially the impression the first half of the film gave me. I wasn't expecting to like it as much come the end as I did, regardless of my problems with it. I certainly wasn't expecting it to, impact me in any real way. But it did. So, hats off to it and all that good stuff. So definitely check it out.
Please do.
So 3 very different films there, very different outcomes and takes, from the 3 different regions. I am looking forward to covering a bit more Korean stuff in the future. But as for now, the next episode, we're changing our tact to category 3.
Oh, yeah.
So before I go into the ramble about how that's going to work, is there anything you would like to add, Nathan?
Nope, nothing at all. I would agree with everything you said, and people should definitely check these films out.
Yeah. And again, I'm sorry if this episode is a bit lacking compared to the first, but I'm medicated to the gills at the moment as well. So, piecing thoughts together has been a bit difficult, but this is the only opportunity Nathan had to record as well. So, it's kind of, we're trying to still meet our commitments while going forward. So, Black Cat, this episode I'm hoping to drop maybe mid to late March. The reason why I have kind of an open window on is it depends how long the postman takes to deliver the new Blu-ray. Again, we'll be covering all 3. Might be a shorter episode, might be a longer episode, I don't know, but we'll try and cover all 3 in equal length. I have more to say about the first episode and the new Blu-ray. And again, guys, thank you so much for all the support with this project, and I'm looking forward to continuing as it grows and evolves. So,
you still there?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I think you're going to say something else. And yeah, same from me, guys. Thank you so much for all the overwhelming support. Looking forward to doing more episodes as we go forward, especially the Cat 3 episode, which should be a lot of fun. And thanks for listening.
Yes, it's beautiful for me.
Really nice.